Right, okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for attending this packed agenda of the Planning Committee this evening. I'm Caleb Tomlinson, I'm the Councillor for Bamber Bridge West, and I am also the chair of this committee. Committee members and members of the public are reminded that this meeting is being recorded and streamed live to YouTube. If you're attending the meeting because you're a member of the public or an agent and you want to speak, come to the table, press the speak button. You have 4 minutes, and Dave will time us and let us know when your time's up. Voting will be undertaken by the electronic voting system. I'm right in that, saying that, aren't I? Yeah. And Dave will tell you the outcome of the vote once it's complete. I'll begin with some housekeeping. If you can put your mobile phones onto silent or switch them off, it's up to you. We're not anticipating a fire alarm, but if there is one, it will be a fire alarm because there's no drill, and the fire exits are behind us, and we'll meet on the car park to the rear of the building. Okay, if I can now ask everyone to introduce themselves, we'll start with the young man on my left.
Hi, I'm David Whelan, the Council's Head of Legal and Procurement.
Claire Gornall, Democratic Services Officer.
Good evening, Kath Unsworth, Councillor for Broadfield Ward.
Good evening, Matthew Farnworth, Councillor for Seven Stars.
Good evening, Councillor Phil Smith. I represent New Longton Hutton East.
Good evening, Councillor David Shaw, representing Howick and Priory Ward in Penwitham.
Good evening, I'm Will Adams and I'm a Councillor for Middlefirth in Penwitham.
Good evening, Councillor Peter Molyneux, Councillor for Samlesbury and Walton Ward.
Good evening, Hayden Williams, Councillor for Leyland Central.
Good evening, Mary Green, Councillor for Moss Side and Ridge Hall.
Good evening, Elaine Stringfellow, Councillor for Lostock Hall Ward.
Good evening, Lisa Mathewson, Senior Planning Officer.
Good evening, Debbie Roberts, Development Management Team Leader.
Good evening, Elizabeth Hindle, Head of Planning and Enforcement.
Okay, thanks for that, everybody. Okay, item 2, we don't have any apologies for absence this evening. Moving on to item 3, do we have any declarations of interest? Okay, agenda item 4 is the minutes of the meeting held on the 1st of Feb. I have read these minutes and agree with them. Councillor Stringfellow. Okay, so that has been seconded. So we'll go to the electronic vote on the minutes. Don't forget, if you weren't here, please abstain. Okay, Dave?
Yes, the minutes have been approved, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that.
Excuse me, Chair. Are all the councillors listed up there? There's only 9 councillors listed, whereas there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 councillors here. Sorry about this.
It's all right. Councillor Stringfellow's not there. Well, she's in person, but not on the screen.
Rather spot it now than later.
Yeah.
The IT gremlins strike again. South Ribble Borough Council. Okay, well, are we happy to pass those minutes, Dave?
Well, it was clearly 8-1 based on those votes, so clearly the majority of councillors have voted for the minutes, yes.
Councillor Stringfellow seconded them. Okay, moving on to item number 5 this evening, appeals decision. This is for Lizzie.
There's no appeals to report, Chair.
This is going swimmingly. Item number 6 this evening, land at Stannyfield Lane, Farrington. Lisa, if you would like to do what you do.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, this is an application for the creation of a new vehicular access point off Stanleyfield Lane. You can see from the area within the applicant's ownership is to the east of the site, which does not form part of this application, which is outlined in blue on the plan on the screen. Land to the immediate north of this is owned by the County Council. This aerial image of the site identifies some of the surrounding road network and land where the junction is positioned on the area identified in the red hatch. Just by viewpoint, you can see Fowler Lane, which is positioned to the north of the application site. This is very similar to a previous application which was approved at committee last month for a different site. The site is also within the adopted master plan area and is covered by policy C4 of the adopted local plan, which is part of the context it's identified for employment use. This use is not part of the application before you, and any further application in the future would need to come back to this committee to be considered in time. The recent Lancashire County Council application, which is detailed in the committee report, was approved in December last year and excluded this area of land within the site as it's not within their ownership. This drawing before you on the screen just shows some of the County Council's access points through the site, which indicates that there's no access from Stanleyfield Lane onto the site in question as part of the consideration. Some images before you just showing the context of the site of Stanleyfield Lane. First image in the top left-hand corner is looking north where the site is on the right-hand side. You can see the national speed limit sign in the background there where the arrow's pointing to, and the house on the left-hand side is part of the Fowler Lane. Image number 2, which is at the bottom left-hand corner, you can see that's looking north from Fowler Lane, which is going north of the application site. Those photographs, just for context, were taken some months ago where the vegetation was more flourishing. So the two images on the right-hand side, those photographs were taken this week, just for context. So the image on the top right-hand corner shows the approximate location of the proposed access into the site, where you can see there's a small short fence line indicating the boundary with a footway at the side of Stanleyfield Lane. Image on the bottom right-hand corner, you can see where the 30 mph signs are indicated. The image is taken from the northern side of Fowler Lane, looking on a southwards direction. The tree line boundary in the background indicates the southern extremity of the site. So this is a proposed site plan showing the proposed junction arrangement and associated works which are due to be provided as part of the application scheme. It indicates in the centre where you can see the spur going off in an eastwards direction into the site to the edge of the red line boundary. Beyond that is the applicant's site ownership, which was highlighted in blue in the initial drawing. Just in terms of some of the context which is outlined in section 4 and in particular 4.3 and 4.4 of the committee report, which provides details of the access arrangement, where there'd be a right-hand turn facility with car capacities, allowing still for 3.5 metre lanes in either direction, passing north and south. Visibility displays have been achieved within the land ownership of the site of the applicant. In both directions. Enhanced footways are provided and traffic calming measures are also proposed as part of the scheme. As well as the right-hand filter lane, you've got pedestrian refuge crossing points with an illuminated keep left bollard. So this pedestrian crossing will provide an improved access to the north and southbound bus stops for other residents. To the north and south of the right-hand turn lane, there's going to be red texture-flesh surfacing to highlight the junction further, and there'll also be a gateway feature which includes dragon teeths, which you can see to the north there on the screen before you, just to mark the change in levels to 30 mph from the national speed limit. As the officer's report details, this has been reviewed by the County Council Highways Department, who have no objection to the application. It's also important to note, as reiterated at last month's planning committee, that we are only assessing the junction, and any future planning application on the site Edge Blue would have to be considered as a separate application at that stage, where all parties would be consulted. This would also likely be a major application. It would be required to come before you at planning committee. You will see that there is a late item in which has been updated, similar to last month's planning committee, where previous objections provided by the County Council and the joint landowner Maple Grove have been removed, and there is no longer any objections. The application, having regard to the comments of statutory bodies and the above commentary, is recommended should be approved, subject to the imposition of a number of planning conditions. Thank you.
Okay, Lisa, thanks very much for your presentation. Okay, we have Councillor Michael Green in his stead as parish councillor wishing to speak in objection to this application. All right, good evening, Michael. You know the score, 4 minutes, okay?
I do. Good evening, Chairman. Good evening, colleagues. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. Whilst I note that the County Council has removed their objection to this application, nevertheless, for the sake of completeness, I declare that I am a County Councillor before starting to speak. Mr Chairman, colleagues, I welcome the proposed traffic calming measures and mitigation on Stanleyfield Lane and the A582, which the Highways Authority have insisted upon as part of this proposal. However, I would urge some consideration for more than just dragon's teeth markings, which have been highlighted by your office. I think there needs to be more than that to slow down traffic. But moving on to more general issues, there's a feeling of deja vu. We're here, I think, on the 1st of February, 1st of this month, talking about a very similar application by the same applicant for the Cuerden strategic site. I note that the Highways Authority has stated that, subject to the mitigation that I've referred to, no objection is raised to the applications on technical highways grounds. However, it should be noted, and very clearly noted from the LCC Highways response, that the proposed access onto Stanleyfield Lane would only be suitable, in their professional opinion, only suitable and acceptable to access housing on that site. Such a position, Mr Chairman, is clearly contrary to the approved site-wide master plan which this committee approved some years ago, and to the applicant's assertions which envisage employment uses on this particular plot of land, and is contrary, as such, to policy C4 of the adopted development plan. The application I would submit is not consistent with the approved site-wide master plan, both in terms of the locations of the proposed access points or the land uses that the Stanleyfield Lane access is only sufficient to serve. You will note, Mr Chairman, you'll note from the diagrams which have been shown this evening and which were shown to members of this committee at the committee on the 1st of February, that residential development is not envisaged by the master plan in this location, in the location which is subject to the application this evening, or indeed adjacent to it. The residential development is envisaged right in the northwest of the Cuerden site, which is some distance away from this location. And no justification has been provided by the applicant as to why the adopted master plan should be set aside. The application is therefore not consistent, in my view, with policy C4 of the local plan. The application forms part of the strategic site, but the applicants are failing to justify the proposals against the requirements of policy C4. You will know from your vast experience, Mr Chairman and colleagues, that planning law requires that applications for planning permission are determined in accordance with the development plan, unless material considerations indicate otherwise. Where an application is contrary to the development plan and where there are insufficient material considerations that indicate that the plan should not be followed, the application should be refused. In summary, Mr Chairman, what we've got here is a site where it's quite a unique one, although we had one at the last committee, where they apply literally for an access point only, with no further development attached at all to it. We've got the County Highways as the professional highways authority saying that could work from a purely technical ground in terms of highways movements, but it could only work to facilitate access to a residential development of housing. Well, there is no residential development anywhere near that location on the master plan, which you yourselves approved as a committee. So I'm at somewhat of a loss. And whilst you might take the view, well, we can approve this tonight, and no doubt your officers will advise that you can do that, and then you will consider it on the basis of a subsequent application which is submitted. If you're doing that, are we not putting off the inevitable? Because if anything comes forward that is not residential, County Highways are going to say it's not appropriate to access it by this access point. So I'll leave it in your very, very capable hands as a committee, but I'm at a loss to see how this should be approved on that basis. Thank you very much.
Eloquence as always, Councillor Green. Lisa, can you shine any light on any of the points Councillor Green made for us?
On the second part, obviously on the mitigation, I don't think there's any need to respond, but just in terms of the land use aspect, just 2 points really. It is noted and detailed in section 9.3 of the report, where the employment and the residential land uses are referred to in detail. And obviously that we're not hiding the fact Highways do advise that it should be restricted to residential use, but obviously this is something which can be considered at a later date. And as was mentioned at the last committee, also that the County Council's mixed use planning application does represent a material change in circumstances since the adoption of the master plan as well. One other thing to note separately from that, there is an informative, which is the last informative on the page, which does actually refer to the acceptable nature and types of land uses, and advises it should be restricted to residential use. On that, thank you.
Okay, thanks for helping us out with that, Lisa. Thank you. Okay, we don't have anyone wanting to speak in support of the application this evening, and we don't have the ward members with us this evening to speak on this application, but we do have the applicant, Tom Whitehead from Brookhouse Group. Deja vu. Good evening, Tom. Same as last time. Press the speak button and I'll bring you in.
Okay, well, thank you, Chair and members. I'm Tom Whitehead of the Brookhouse Group, and we are the applicant. Members will recall I addressed committee earlier this month in relation to our other access proposal at the Cuerden site. That application was approved by 9 votes to 1. This application is set in exactly the same context, which I'll briefly summarise. Brookhouse own approximately 1/3 of the strategic site, and we are the applicant for this proposal. Your local plan requires the site to be delivered in a comprehensive manner. Your officer's report explains that Lancashire County Council, who own approximately 2/3 of the site, granted themselves planning permission for their land only in December. The Lancashire development is not comprehensive as it excludes our land. It is therefore not policy compliant. You will recall that South Ribble made representations to Lancashire asking them not to isolate our land. It appears your representations were not heeded by Lancashire. In order to meet your own local plan policy, therefore, Brookhouse have no other choice but to submit these access applications of our own. Your officer's report has made clear that this proposal is solely for highways access. There are no buildings or indeed uses proposed. If this access is approved, we will work with South Ribble to apply for the buildings that will use this access, and clearly that planning application will come back to committee as Lisa has already advised. I can confirm that we won't be building this access in isolation. This is simply establishing whether the access in itself is acceptable in principle. I made the commitment to the committee earlier this month, and I will reiterate this again. Following comments made by and on behalf of local residents, I am happy to commit to meeting with members and residents prior to us working up any further proposals. Clearly, however, we must all note that this is an allocated development site. In terms of Councillor Green's comments, I note that he's not objecting in principle or indeed raising any safety concerns. This is simply a matter of the use he's referring to. We are, of course, not proposing a use in this application. and the officer advises, as Lisa has reiterated, that the LCC actions are material and have changed the circumstances of the master plan. That was LCC's action. The only other thing to say is that our proposal in itself will not hinder the delivery of the LCC permission, and we note that Lancashire's agent has written to the committee withdrawing their previous objection. I'm happy to take any questions. Otherwise, thank you for your time.
Okay, Tom, thanks very much for your presentation. You just stay there just for a moment. Do any committee members have any questions they wish to ask? Because he has still got Councillor Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Tom, just and you might not want to confirm it at the moment, but if you could clarify a situation, that would be helpful. The master plan is very it's just something that we've worked hard on for a long time, and obviously we'd like to see any planning application conform to the master plan. If your negotiations with county and in the wisdom of both parties, you were allowed access off the original access points, would you be withdrawing these? Would you be using those access points rather than the access points on here that would have to say as a council we're not particularly happy with, but maybe it's something we have to put up with. But if you could confirm anything like that would be perhaps helpful for us making a decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. We too have been working for a long time on developing the master plan. We work collaboratively with officers and indeed Lancashire County Council on this, and we're disappointed we're in this position. I can obviously make no commitments tonight. We would very much prefer to be working with Lancashire. We've made representations to them on that basis. All I can say is that should the council approve this access tonight, it strengthens our position in negotiations with Lancashire. We would very much prefer to deliver the site as a comprehensive single entity, as indeed your local plan would. And I'm afraid that's probably all I can say at this juncture.
You nearly got there. Yeah, you nearly got there, Tom.
Apologies.
Was there anything else you could strengthen? Thank you.
Councillor Matt Farnworth.
Hi, Tom. Just a quick question about, I know you mentioned it's been mentioned that there's traffic calming measures in the scheme, but I'm just quite concerned that Stannisfield Lane is already extremely busy and regularly bottlenecked through the rush hour traffic. And I accept that it's a completely separate application, but I've got concern about the timings. Obviously, there's Lancashire County Cricket Club at the cricket ground across the road from what I think is a proposed site. So my concern as a councillor is for our residents in terms of if the simultaneous construction on both sides of the road, then that'll create even more problems. So, I'd hope that you'd work with residents, to try and alleviate that and the other sort of developers.
Yeah, I'll take one more question for Tom from Councillor Shaw, and then I'll ask Lisa to come in.
Thank you, Chair. My question is, I don't think I was part of this committee when the master plan was put through, and I'm a bit confused as to why we are talking about a single use type of access as a means to put pressure on the county council to implement the master plan that this committee originally put in. Is it possible to help me with that?
Yeah, I was going to come back on both of those points, actually. The question by Councillor Farnworth, just in terms of the multiple access points, all of those access points have been looked at, not in isolation, they have been looked at as a comprehensive lot of access points. The access to the cricket pavilion, which is currently under construction, is much further north towards the roundabout and significantly further north than Fowler Lane, which you could see on the drawings before you as well. So it's just to give some reassurance that Neil Stevens at the County Council has looked at all of the access points. So that hasn't been done in isolation, really. for your question on that. And then just in terms of the land use, obviously there is an adopted master plan which is in place. The County Council's application does look at that, but it does miss out areas of the red line, which obviously is in the applicant's control. The application stay within the red line and the one from last month as well, in terms of the land uses. But any application that does come forward in future, that would be looked at as part of an application at that stage for the nature and the type of uses proposed in detail.
Okay, Matt. Right. Councillor Mrs. Green, I think you put your hands up, even though I said I wasn't having any more. One question, and then we're going to open up to committee. All right. Okay, Tom, thanks very much for your time. I will now bring this application into committee. Councillor Mrs. Green.
Thank you, Chair. As been previously stated, I'm totally confused, to be honest. You know, we've got on page 12, section 1.3 saying that highways have no objection for residential vehicles, but not HGVs. But the master plan states that this land is for employment, in which case you're going to have a certain amount of HGVs, which we wouldn't want going on to Stanleyfield Lane because, it, as previously been stated, it's a very busy road, potentially going to be busier. Why is the master plan being set aside? That's shown page 12, and it's contrary to policy C4 of the local plan, page 15. And one question I would like is, if it had to go through, as one of the conditions, it says on page 16, 7.2, all the proposal of mitigation on the 582 for the approaches to Stanleyfield Lane, signalised roundabout junction, which are necessary and are sufficient for this proposal. Without this mitigation, the local highway authority would oppose this proposal. So could we, if it had to go through, could we have that these improvements on this 582 must be done before any start of any construction? Could we have that as part of a condition if it had to be voted in tonight? But I'm totally confused. It's saying one thing, the report, then it's saying another thing. I'm not totally happy with it. I feel in a sense that it's some sort of ploy, I don't know, with LCC. I don't know what's going on. So I would like to propose refusal.
Okay, I've got a long list in front of me. Thanks, Councillor Green. Okay, so Councillor Green is proposing refusal, but I need a policy reason. Councillor Green.
Yeah. Because it's on the... Where are we here?
It's all right.
Yeah, it's contrary to policy C4 and policy G17 as well. Well, no, it's not decided. It's more a policy C4, really.
Okay, thanks. So that's a proposal for refusal from Councillor Mrs. Green, policy C4. Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think as everybody in the committee knows, that the CUDA master plan and everything that went through the planning committee a number of years ago predates my tenure on the planning committee. But, you know, it had a policy C4 which basically details how this whole land was supposed to be developed, and that whole land to be developed was to include the Brookhouse land. It was supposed to have residential in one corner of it and this industrial. Now, for reasons that we are not aware of and the council should have been made aware of, Lancashire County Council seem to have taken it upon themselves to approve land just in their ownership and nobody else's. So effectively, Brookhouse have got two patches of land that they're supposed to develop as part of a master plan that they can't have access to. So they've got no other option but to apply for the access to it. So in that case, policy C4 becomes just defunct. It's a material change in circumstances. So to apply policy C4 is a misnomer because it's completely different. I think I mentioned last time that effectively what this committee has been asked to do is mediate between Brookhouse and Lancashire County Council. this is what we're being asked to do, because Brookhouse need access to their own land to do whatever they want to do within the future, which may or may not come before this committee. So there are no reasons whatsoever that we can actually refuse this. So yet again, we've been used as a punch bag between the two, and we have no other option but to approve this application. So I propose approval.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Williams. Councillor Farnworth.
Thanks, Chair. I agree with what Councillor Williams said. I'm just disappointed once again that this planning committee of this local authority finds itself in the middle of this wrangle between the applicant and Lancashire County Council. I was surprised yesterday when we got the supplement, I think it was yesterday anyway, when we got the supplementary, which stated LCC withdrew its objections. Now, I know Brookhouse own a third of the site and LCC own the other third, the other 2/3. So something needs to happen. I mean, this is quite frankly a complete mess. And I don't think it's fair that this local authority finds itself in the middle of this, and I'd be happy to hear the rest of the committee's views on this.
Okay, Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies, I'm keeping my jacket on because I've got my uniform underneath, so it's important I'm not representing them. So yeah, I mean, for me, this is fairly straightforward, to be honest. I think we can't really refuse an application because of what might come afterwards. We've got to take it as what's in front of us. I've got a lot of sympathy with Tom and Brookhouse in terms of the position they're in, and for me, they're trying to find a solution. So I think I agree with Councillor Williams in terms of everything he said, of why we can't refuse this, because we can't refuse it on highway ground, because the Highways Authority are saying, or have withdrawn their objections. So I think if we did refuse it, I think we're probably going to cause more problems for us and this council moving forward. So on the basis of that, and with Tom's commitment to kind of work with the community moving forward and members, I think is a positive thing as well. In my mind, I'm quite happy to propose, to second the proposal for approving this. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Adams. Welcome back. We've missed you. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask Mr. Whelan a question? Thanks, Chair. I'm still fixating on this single use. Are we prejudging or prejudicing a future decision by making an access that can only be used for one type of application?
Through you, Chair, in effect, no. All you're doing is proving, if you go with officer recommendation, all you're doing is approving the access. You're not approving anything else. A future application may come forward. We don't know what will be contained with that. We'd have to consider it at that time. I mean, the way I view this application, I tend to agree with Councillor Adams. I think it's quite a simple application. In a way, you can forget about the whole issue between Brookhouse and LCC. There is an application for an access. Are there any reasons to refuse it? As far as I can see, the answer is no. But obviously, it's your decision.
Thanks for that, Dave. Councillor Shaw, do you want to come back in?
No, I think it's convinced me to go with Councillor Williams' proposal.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Williams. Councillor Smith?
We keep hearing that there's no reason to refuse it, but depends on whether we consider the master plan document that we have adopted by this council, and whether we consider it sort of still relevant within any application that comes forward to this council. And quite clearly, access off Stansfield Lane into the site does not conform with the master plan. I've had a great deal of trouble with this over the last few days, reading it and for it and against it and all the various other things, but it is a as far as I can see, it is a reason that it could be refused. I'd like some advice from officers on that particular one. I'm not saying that I'm going to support refusal, but as I didn't with the previous one, and I have certain sympathies with Brook House, and I think I said last time, if this application with regard to Kewarden has to be a piecemeal application because we've been waiting 15 years for it or more, that's the way it has to be. But, you know, we would like all applications, planning applications, to conform with the master plan. The master plan is there for a good reason. The other application was quite a bit easier in the sense of an access point. It's access of a dual carriageway with a runoff, and that was easy. It's not an access point off what is almost a single. It's not a dual carriageway. It's a single carriageway either way, and it's very narrow at the best of times and very, very busy. So I have some problems with this particular one. I have to say. Really, from that point, and you know, as I say, I'm going over it again. We've been is the master plan completely defunct, and do we, as a planning committee and a council, do we have to just ignore it now? I'm uncomfortable with that part of it, really. Thank you.
Okay, Lisa, would you like to give Councillor Smith some steering directions?
Yeah, I'll just come back to Councillor Smith. So I think there was two separate points, really. The first one I'll take is the master plan and policy C4 of that master plan. Obviously, there's three separate criteria within the policy. And as indicated earlier, whilst it is an allocated site, the whole of the site from the county council's application and the two parcels of land we have, all of those land parcels are covered by that allocated site. However, we have indicated earlier there has been a material change in circumstances in the wording of the policy with the agreed master plan for the comprehensive development of that site. So things have progressed slightly further before us with the approval of the county council scheme at the end of last year, which excluded these two parcels of land. I don't know if Lizzie's perhaps got any other opinions on this, but in terms of, I think the whole of that policy perhaps has been watered down slightly with that change in circumstances that has taken place, not just over the last few months since the approval of that, but obviously with the parties not being able to come to agreement to work together. So there has to be a way forward to make sure that the allocated site can progress with separate land uses, you know, as a whole within that. I was just going to come back in terms of the point about the narrowness of the road as well. As part of the application, it is proposed to widen the road slightly on the eastern side, which goes within the red line area, where the footway is going to be widened on the eastern side to in the northern part between 2 metres and the southern part 3 metres. And then the island in the road will still allow two-way traffic with the right-hand turn lane as well, so there shouldn't be any hold-ups with that right-hand turn filter lane, and the islands between that, allowing 3.5 metres in either direction, which the county highways has indicated they're happy with, and has been reviewed as part of the scheme.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. Lizzie, do you want to add anything to that?
I'd just reiterate what Lisa has said, in that it has watered down the master plan to a slight degree, but also what Dave mentioned earlier, that we are just looking at the access tonight, and that's all we can really consider. So it does seem to be quite a straightforward application.
Okay, thanks, Lizzie. Councillor Smith, would you like to now make a proposal?
Yeah, but the access point is not in the master plan.
So would you like to second refusal?
No, Chair, I'm not. I'm just sort of trying to open the debate a bit, really, because I think a lot of us are uncomfortable with this, and maybe we'll just have to support it and hope that the pressure being put on in either direction, we hope that is going to work and that we aren't actually going to regret a decision a bit later on when different applications might come in. I think we just perhaps have to trust the way forward with both Brookhouse and County, and that this will apply enough pressure to revert back to what the master plan is in the first place and deal with it that way. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Smith. Right, so Councillor Mullinor.
Thank you, Chair. I think unfortunately the county's put Brookhouse into an almost impossible position. How can you have land and you can't get to it? It seems ridiculous. They've done it twice now. It's certainly a lesson to be learned, I suppose, for the future when people are buying land, if to try and make sure that this doesn't happen again. But as I say, I think they put them in an impossible position. They're having to try and, alter that to give some manoeuvre ability as far as Brookhouse is concerned. I hope it works. But as Councillor Smith just said there, you've got a situation where we're relying on, if we put this through this evening, we're hoping that both parties can get together and come up with something amiable without having to have this access. But again, I think it's just one of those things that put us as a planning committee in a very difficult position. And it's not something that's an easy thing to put straight, really. I think we are in the hands of goodwill from both parties in this case. And I think if we do move forward with it, the only way to move forward is to say, yes, we'll go for it on the hope that it won't happen and they'll be able to come up with another compromise.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Mullinor. Councillor Mrs. Green, I'm going to allow you to come back one more time and then I'm going to go to the vote. Okay?
Just a quick thing. I'm confused because on the master plan, it showed the top left-hand side was residential land. This was never on as residential land. So that's confused me altogether, that the pieces of land have seems to have been changed somehow from one to another. And then I know we're not judging anything that's going on there tonight, but potentially you'll end up with an access road into nothing, into a field. So somebody must have an idea why they want this access point going in there. So it's not really as cut and dry, black and white, because why do they want an access into a field, into nothing at this moment? Doesn't make sense. And that's why I'm totally confused. And that's where I think once we allow the access, we're allowing the access, and we don't know potentially in the future what's going to be using that access and could have problems on Stanleyfield Lane. So I still hold for refusal. Whether anybody seconds it or not, I don't know.
Okay. Thanks, Councillor Green. Do I have a seconder for refusal this evening? We don't. So the only proposal in front of us is approval. And unfortunately, the IT has failed us once again here at the Civic Centre. So it is the good old-fashioned show of hands. And this is for approval. If we can have a show of hands now, please. And against? Okay, Dave?
Yes, Chair, that's been passed by a vote of 9-1.
Okay, thanks very much indeed, Dave. Thanks for your attendance this evening, Tom, and best of luck for the future. Okay, item number 7 this evening is 16 Watkin Lane. Again. Debbie, if you'd like to present this application again.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry about that. Took a bit. Okay, 16 Watkin Lane is an end terrace property end terrace commercial property at the junction of Watkin Lane and Horton Street in Lostercall. It's a mixed use area in the Tardy primary retail areas. There is a self-contained flat above which will be retained and an enclosed rear yard with a ginnel at the back. Access is limited. Horton Street and Linley Street are bollard protected onto Watkin Lane. But the nearest car park for this property, it doesn't have any parking of its own, is Hope Terrace, which is 110 metres to the north. The proposal is two-part: change of use from a retail property to a hot food takeaway. At the moment, it's retail with storage at ground floor and the first flat upstairs, as I mentioned earlier. No internal alteration. I beg your pardon, only internal alterations, nothing outside. The applicant's not specified the nature of the takeaway, but he's suggested opening hours of 4 p.m. till 11:30, 7 days a week. We don't know what staff numbers will be, but the property size limits that anyway, so it wouldn't be excessive. There is also installation of a short flue through the rear roof plane. It's this blue one. You can just see it. It's only a little one. Okay, this is the existing property viewed from Watkin Lane, and the same one viewed from Horton Street. As you can see, it's bollard protected onto Watkin Lane. And the same view from Watkin Lane. The adjacent side streets are busy and parking's really difficult. During the evening, when the business is expected to be open mostly, and residential parking is likely to be taken by the residents on Horton Street, the lack of parking, in our opinion, is an issue. There are no designated parking spaces for the business, for delivery drivers, or for the existing flat. And the view towards Tardigate District Centre, which is 110 metres in the north. The right-hand photo shows the view along Watkin Lane viewed south. As you can see, it's a busy classified road. There are no waiting at any time traffic restrictions in force on both directions for 100 metres in front of the property. As I mentioned earlier, no designated parking and nowhere to park at the side. This application's been before committee a few times. It came maybe 2 or 3 months ago, and we refused it on 2 grounds. One was the negative impact of the flue on the character of the area. Now, the applicant's changed that. The flue is acceptable in our opinion now, and that reason for refusal is taken away. But he's not done anything to address the loss of amenity, increased noise, activity and demand for parking spaces. We've not had a statement or any attempt to address that. And for that reason, we will go again with refusal on the grounds of lost amenity, increased noise and activity and demand for parking spaces. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Debbie, for that repeat performance, shall we say. Yes. All right, we have no members of the public wanting to speak on this application. However, we do have the ward member, Councillor Leslie Pritchard. Yeah. Welcome to Planning Committee, Councillor Pritchard. You have 4 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and hello, colleagues. Obviously, one of the ward councillors for Lostock Hall, and I'm here tonight to represent the community. I was aware of the previous application, but given it was down for refusal, I didn't attend the last meeting, but obviously it's back again, so I thought it was important that I came along tonight. So as Debbie said, obviously, I realised that it was refused last time on two grounds. But the most serious issue about loss of parking space and loss of amenity hasn't been addressed. The adjacent streets are very busy with people parking on pavements, sometimes on double yellow lines. In fact, I met with a resident on Monday night in a nearby street who's got real issues with that problem. There's actually been ambulances who can't get through on his particular street, which lies just across the way, which is Berry Street. There is no designated parking, so it's going to be a nightmare for delivery drivers. They can't turn around in Horton Street, so you're only going to be able to drive up and then reverse back. If we have an issue where people are coming to actually pick up takeaway or delivery drivers are coming, they're just going to park on pavements, which is going to be a real issue and a real safety issue for both pedestrians and obviously on the highway. So I have real concerns about that. It basically is going to exacerbate an already problematic situation in Lostock Hall relating to lack of parking in the area. Most importantly, this application stands contrary to the Core Strategy Policy 17 and the Local Plan G17, in as much as it should not reduce amenities and we should be protecting pedestrian and highway safety. I agree entirely with the officer's recommendation, and I'm sure that you'll take this into account when you vote for or against this application. And thank you very much for listening.
Okay, thanks for your presentation, Councillor Pritchard. That was her first visit to the Planning Committee. Well done. Councillor Walton, do you have anything to add? Yeah.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Chair, for giving me the opportunity to speak to the committee tonight, and thank you, Debbie, for your comprehensive report again. This planning application for a change of use for 16 Watkin Lane Lostock Hall to a hot food takeaway is not in the ward I represent, but in a neighbouring ward. But residents have again contacted me over this application for change of use and the adverse impact the approval of such a change of use will have on the neighbouring residents of the Tidygate area and residents of the Lostock Hall area of Farrington Moss. This application was also refused in October 2023, so it's like deja vu again. The Tidygate District Centre forms part of the policy E4 of the current South Ribble local plan, which states that the council will improve and control the mix of uses of the existing local centres which provide convenient daily shopping needs. The area of Tidygate from Coot Lane to Victoria Street already provides 10 hot food takeaways, 1 cafe, 1 bakery and a restaurant. So does the area need yet another hot food takeaway? The property is situated on the corner of Watkin Lane and Horton Street, which has been said is a cul-de-sac with bollarded pedestrian access onto Watkin Lane. The only vehicular access being from Berry Street. This is similar to Lindley Street and Sefton Street, which are also cul-de-sacs, so street parking is at a premium. The premises is also close to 2 major road junctions and a Pelican crossing. There are double yellow lines along the B5254 Watkin Lane and Croston Road, providing formal parking restrictions, which are often ignored. Parking in the area is already very limited and vehicles are constantly and inappropriately parked on pavements, double yellow lines, in the ginnels to the rear of their properties, often blocking access for residents and service and emergency vehicles. The library car park is also often used for parking, which restricts space for residents who wish to use the library. The application has no provision for staff or customer parking in the area or for delivery drivers who are already causing problems with inappropriate parking in the Tidygate area. The approval of such a change of use would have a serious detrimental impact on the lives of nearby residents in the very residential part of Tidygate, which would be contrary to the South Ribble Local Plan G17 and Core Strategy 17, which seeks to protect pedestrians and highway safety, which seeks not to reduce the number of parking spaces to below the standard set in Policy F1, as the application would compromise the free flow of traffic due to the lack of appropriate parking in the area. The opening hours of 4 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. 7 days a week would also have an adverse effect from nighttime vehicles manoeuvring, parking, slamming doors, and could possibly encourage antisocial behaviour. So again, I hope that the committee will support the officer's recommendation to refuse this application for change of use, as the refusal issues previously have not been addressed. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Walton. Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Councillor Pritchard and Councillor Walton. It's always helpful when local members come and speak up on behalf of the community. This is fairly straightforward for me, and I don't want to prolong the debate too much because it is that straightforward. This is not beneficial to that community or to the surrounding communities either, and therefore I will support refusal or proposed refusal on the basis of what's in the report. And thank you, Debbie, for a comprehensive one. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Adams. Yeah, indeed. Well, thanks, Debbie. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll second the proposal.
By any chance, does anyone have any other proposals on this application? No? Okay, so again, it's a show of hands. This is for the officer's recommendation for refusal. And if we can all show our hands now. Okay, Dave?
Yes, Chair, that's a unanimous vote in favour of refusal.
Okay, moving swiftly on to agenda item 8 this evening. This is an application for a red door. Debbie.
You've just taken my entire speech. It's probably the shortest one I've ever done. 78 Towngate, the old police station, Navy Club on the corner of Towngate and St Andrews Way in Leyland. It's a grade 2 listed building, so it's listed building consent, not planning permission, and it's only come before committee because it's a council-owned building. Get ready. We would like to change this door on the building, or the applicant would, to this door. No representation, no objection. Listed building consent recommended for approval. Thank you. Oh, I beg your pardon. The consultation period hasn't quite finished. We've not had anything yet, but we'd like to delegate it to the chair, vice chair, and the head of planning. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that extremely interesting presentation, Debbie. Hardest one you've done for a long time, that. Councillor Unsworth.
Yeah, as everybody's saying, it's very straightforward. I can see no reason to do anything other than accept the recommendation that the chair and vice chair make that decision.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Unsworth. Councillor Adams, then Councillor Mulliner.
Yeah, it is straightforward. But I don't want to be pedantic, but I don't actually like it. But I mean, that's not a decision for the planning committee to make. I think it could be a bit better, but anyway, yeah, no, I'm happy to second approval on that basis. Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Adams. Councillor Mulliner, then Councillor Mrs Green, then we're going to go to the vote, I think.
Yeah, thank you. Could I just ask why it's a red door and not a blue door, Chairman?
We keep politics well away from the planning committee, and you should know that, Councillor Mulliner.
I'm just asking the question.
After the length of time you've been on this committee, you should know that we do not discuss politics.
Can I ask why it's red?
I presume it's because it's a credit union.
I was just wondering if it fitted in line with the area itself, but I thought maybe black or something like that would have been more suitable.
Presume it's the credit union's colours. They want a red door. So
union's colour scheme. The door itself, the original existing door isn't original, but the credit union are finding that people think they're closed because there is no, it doesn't look open at all.
But does that fall in line with the area?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Okay. But the applicant gave us, I think I had 8 or 9 example doors, some which were really not appropriate. This is the most appropriate for that type of building.
Thank you.
I think Tesco have some red in their advertising wordings, don't they? Councillor Green, did you want to come in?
Yeah, Chair. Well, it was similar to Councillor Mulliner, actually. What I read in the report was that the door that's on is not the original door, and therefore we don't need to keep to that. But as you know, say for instance on Fox Lane, where there's a lot of graded listed property down there, if they've got to have new windows or new doors, although they're not the original door that's on, if they come to replace it, they've got to replace it with something that's similar to that to keep it in continuity with the heritage theme. And that's what I think Councillor Mulliner's pertaining to. And I think that's what I think. Could we not have something like, if it's a black door already or a neutral door to go with the heritage feel of it, could we not keep to that? That was the only thing I was going to say.
Yeah, I mean, by all means, Councillor Green, if the application, you're not happy with it, well, you could always move an amendment for refusal, couldn't you? But Debbie, if you want to come in on that.
Yeah, it's only a quick one. You're right, we try and get replacements in context, but we don't support like for like replica. It doesn't work, it's pastiche and it just doesn't work. But for this door, the original would have been a split door, which from a building regs accessibility perspective isn't acceptable anymore. It's appropriate. It's timber, it's everything we need it to be for that building. What we can't govern is the colour. That's out of our hands. Thank you.
Fair then, I feel that it's not even a traditional style of door. It's a very modern door, isn't it? And you can get traditional doors, more traditional style doors that would probably fit in better with the building.
And as I've intimated, Councillor Green, you could move an amendment for refusal.
Right. Well, I'd like to do that, please.
Okay.
Yeah. You're going to call me awkward, aren't you? But
No, it's up to, I mean, I've known you.
Trying to keep.
Mary, I've known you 13 years.
Yes.
I'm going to hold back with what I think. Okay? But you're moving, you want to
I take that as a
this
compliment,
application.
not otherwise. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Mullinale, do you want to second refusal?
Yeah, I think it is. For me, that doesn't go with the area. So yeah, I'll second the refusal.
Dave, do you want to come in with some advice?
I was just going to say, if there's refusal being seconded, we take that as a variation. So we take the vote on refusal first.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we have had a proposal for approval by Councillor Runsworth, seconded by Councillor Adams, but we have had an amendment for refusal by Councillor Mrs Green and seconded by Councillor Peter Mullinale. So we go to the vote. This is for refusal. A show of hands for refusal, please.
Yes, that's 2 for refusal, Chair.
Okay, so we now go to the vote on approval.
So yes, so the majority, I think it's 8-2, is for approval.
Wonderful. Thanks very much indeed, ladies and gentlemen, for attending this evening. What I thought was going to be a bit of a bore, I've really enjoyed.